Alchemy of Life, Dr. Lino Martinez' Spirited Dance with Destiny. Journey into the heart of resilience with Dr. Lino Martinez, a beacon of transformation, a spiritual warrior, an alchemist of life. Surviving a rare genetic disease and over 40 surgeries, he sculpted adversity into strength. His courageous transition from female to male at 34 paints a vivid testament to the power of authenticity. Now at 43, he stands as a monument of triumphant living. Dive into this memoir, A Little Less Fear. Available, that's on Kindle, and it's a symphony of courage and self discovery, echoing the melody of the human spirit. His poetry, A Rhythm of Love, serves as a universal language connecting us all. And behind the mic, he resonates wisdom as a podcaster, inspiring listeners globally. Embark on this enlightening voyage with Dr. Martinez. Embrace your transformation with a little less fear. Like, share, and subscribe. Let's radiate this beacon of inspiration together. Welcome to the Wellness Driven Life Show, where you're about to go on a wellness driven ride. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest for you today. Resilient and extraordinary, Lino Martinez has turned adversity into triumph. Born with a rare Muckle-Wells syndrome and transitioning to male at 34, Lino's journey is marked by over 40 surgeries. Now 43, he is a doctor of psychology and champions healing through his work on chronic urological conditions. A poet, singer, podcaster, and advocate for the deaf community, Lino is also an author, hoping to inspire love and peace through his book, A Little Less Fear. Please help me welcome Dr. Lino Martinez.
Thanks so much. This is awesome. It's an honor, and it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You are very, very welcome. I'm really looking forward to sharing your inspiring journey with the audience today. Dr. Lino Martinez, can you start by sharing a little bit about your background? Let's go, way back. Give us a little taste of what it was like growing up for you.
So growing up for me, life was a challenge right from the start. I was a preemie. I was a breech baby. The cord was wrapped around my neck, and I used to tell a joke saying, "Oh my goodness, I knew it was going to be a tough life because I was trying to take my life in the womb by wrapping the cord around my neck." And so I was right a little under 5 pounds, 4.5 pounds, and my life kind of just took a turn right at probably about 5 or 6 months old, where I started experiencing some illnesses, spasms in my body, and I didn't really get to thrive, grow much. I stayed a little person, and but I was always doing really well in school. I was always a straight A student, exceeding in school, but somehow had a lot of complications with my health right from the start.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, that sounds like similar to me. I had a lot of complications as well, although probably not as many as you, but you're right. Like you just talked about, 5 months old where you were having these kind of complications. So I'm very curious because I know my own journey, but how did you respond when you started going into school? You said you were a great student, but did you have
Mhm.
to, maybe visit doctors more often? Like how did it affect your childhood as far as your health and just being an average ordinary kid?
Well, I went to the doctor. I was in the hospital off and on as a little kid, but not as often as once I hit my 20s. For me, it was mostly I wasn't gaining weight, I wasn't growing,
Mm,
and I got made fun of a lot in school because I was so tiny. I was the runt. And I even have this specific memory, my first day of third grade, and the teacher came up to me, and I was always on time, a little early, and I was in the front row, and this teacher comes up to me, and she said, "Oh, sweetheart, kindergarten is next door." And I put my hands on my hips, and I said, "I'm in third grade." And so, I mean, these were some of the things that I went through being such a like a little person, but other than
Yeah.
that, it actually gave me character, and it helped me work even harder to be on top. And so, but the real struggles as far as being constantly living in the hospitals began at about 26 years old. And
Mhm.
by then, the disease had progressed so far in advance that it was pretty much too late by then.
Dr. Lino Martinez, can you share with the audience a little bit about what the disease is? If most of us don't understand what it is, can you describe what it is, what it does, how it affects you?
So I was diagnosed at 36 years old. Yes, it took 36 years to get a diagnosis. And the disease is called Muckle-Wells syndrome. That's two word, Muckle, Muckle, Wells, and then syndrome. It is statistically 1 in a million in the United States,
Wow.
and half of that's like one every 500,000 in Europe because it's mostly common in European descent. And what it is, it's a mutation in the NLRP3 genetic variant. However, in some people, it's not, it doesn't even have to mutate. It almost acts as a satellite. If ever there's any type of environmental stresses,
Mm,
the gene could just activate, turn on, and it's like a sensor. It's like, what's going on? Danger, danger. And if it feels dangerous, it'll start to, what one of my doctors called it a drama queen, start to overreact, be a drama queen, and cause
mm,
excessive inflammation throughout my body. And excessive inflammation, not just in a specific organ or a specific part of my body, but it can be in my nerves, it could be my brain, it could be in my eyes, it could be in anything that's a cell on my body. It can cause inflammation. And so that is the exaggeration of Muckle-Wells syndrome, the fact that it can cause inflammation, and exaggeration to the point where it can cause paralysis. And that's basically what happened with me. It caused atypical paralysis in some of my peripheral nerves and my motor nerves. And
mm.
one of the biggest things that I lost was my urinary bladder. It's really unheard of. To this day, I've only met one person that has had their bladder removed, and he was in his 90s. My
Wow.
bladder started to give up at 26, and by the time I was 33, I mean, I already had by then like 15, 16, 17 surgeries trying to save the urinary bladder, but they couldn't. And so basically what had happened is my pelvic muscles kind of became paralyzed, and I was not able to expel urine. And just like with any muscle or anything in the body, if you don't use it, you lose it. So because I wasn't peeing normally, the bladder started to harden and shrink. And towards the end, I was only holding 4 ounces of liquid. And with only 4 ounces of
Mm,
liquid, you best believe I had to go pee all. And because the muscles weren't working, only a couple drips would come out. So I started to
wow.
catheterize, and catheterizing up to 10 times a day, which is 300 times a month for a whole year. And when you
Oh my
catheterize
god.
300 times a month, you start to get strictures, and it starts to bleed, and it gets stuck. And it just got to the point where I just wasn't living anymore. I was dying a
Yeah.
very slow death. And the first thing to go was my urinary bladder. So I had a really huge operation in when I was 33 years old, where they did a complete reconstruction of my urinary tract system, and they cut my ureters, which are the tubes from my kidneys to my bladder. They completely removed the entire bladder. They completely removed my urethra. They removed my appendix and about two sections of my small intestine, about 50 inches total, to create a reservoir to hold my urine. Now they call it a neo bladder, NEO, like a new bladder. And so they reconnected the ureter tubes to that, and then they used my appendix as a conduit in my opening, as it's called a stoma, around my abdomen, where I now catheterize about 7 times a day. And that took about 5 years to heal from. So it wasn't like just a quick surgery. Oh, here's your surgery. You'll be good in 3 months. It was like, here's your surgery. Let's see how your body adapts. It took 5 years to heal. It was quite a life changing event.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is definitely an extreme, extraordinary journey of navigating all of this. And so when you first started, I'm like, oh my gosh, it sounds so much like SLE, systemic lupus, which is what I have. And where the body is just constantly fighting itself and it gets angry and all of the inflammation, et cetera. And um I like to say that I could top you, but Dr. Latino, excuse me, Lino Martinez, I cannot top you. I you've
Yeah.
got it me beat as far as that goes, and I do not envy you. So when you were going through all of this,
Mhm.
I mean, that must have been so challenging. I mean, there must have
Mhm.
been many times where you felt like you said, this isn't living. I
Mhm.
I don't even know if I want to be here. What was that like for
Mhm.
you?
That happened a lot. I mean, I graduated with my doctorate in 2010 when I was 30 years old, and I already started having surgeries 2 years before that. So luckily, the faculty helped me, and I was able to do a lot of my assignments in the hospital. But shortly after graduating, it was straight to the hospital, and I lived in hospitals for over 10 years. And so I missed the whole Facebook era. Facebook became big. I never had one. I still haven't had one to this day. And I never even watched TV those 10 years. It was just me hitting the books, reading a lot, and trying to persevere with self growth and try to figure out who I am inside and how I'm going to survive and if I'm even going to live. I didn't know if I was going to live. Can anyone live without their urinary bladder? Can that, I mean, in all the studies at the time, they only had up to 5 years of literature. Oh, people, 5 year survival rate. I'm like, what's past 5 years? This surgery hasn't been done that often, so we really don't know. So I was in this a lot of I don't know what's going to happen. But within that time, because I mean, I was 33 when I lost my bladder, but those 3 years in between trying to find a diagnosis, other things kept also failing. And one of the biggest things that I lost was my ability to talk. So by the time I was 38, 39, 40, 38, 38, I lost my ability to speak. And
Mm.
the disease had paralyzed my vocal cords. And anyone that has gone through paralysis of any sort can contest and detest on how awful it is if you even try to move anything that's paralyzed. And in even breathing, because your vocal cords move even when you breathe, even breathing hurt. So I was in bed a lot. And set aside from that, April, I had a feeding tube for 8 years. So at the time, I thought, okay, I have a feeding tube. I'm losing my ability to eat. I wearing hearing aids. I can't talk. I can't pee. I'm like, what's left of me? What's left of my life? Really, what am I supposed to do? And what am I supposed to do with my life? I went to school to be a doctor, to be able to listen to patients, to be able to speak to patients. I can't do either. I can't do any of that. And so it was actually in the moment of silence when I wasn't speaking that I went to school, to sign school, to learn sign language, and I became very close to the deaf community. Beautiful, beautiful community, and they accepted me. I mean, open arms. And so I learned a different way to communicate. And in that way, during that silence is actually when I became very spiritual. And I went and I saw a monk speak at a theater, and when I saw the monk on stage with the lights on him and he's in his orange robes, it's just something lit up inside me. And I
Mm.
remember him saying something along the lines of, just because you're suffering doesn't mean you have to be in pain. And just because you're in pain doesn't mean you have to be suffering. And I'll never forget that, because I thought, what? I thought suffering and pain came hand in hand. I guess they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he went ahead to describe how everything's really in the mind. No matter what you're going through, you can control your mind, you can control anything. And so then I started to really trust myself and love myself more, and I went inward. And the more deeper I went inward, the closer I got to I met the right doctors, the right immunosuppress. I got on the right medications. My voice started to come back, and I mean, here I am now at 43, and I'm thriving. I'm thriving for the first time. I just injected for the last time this last week with my immunosuppressant. I don't have a feeding tube anymore. That was taken out 8 months ago. So I
Wow.
work out 5 days a week. Yeah, and all of this because of the power of the mind, because of the power of self love, and the power of connection and trusting people.
Oh my gosh, congratulations. And your
Thank you.
story is mind-blowing. I'm just like standing here in awe, and it's not too often that I have a guest that really takes me like fully engulfed in their story the way that you are. And so it sounds to me like you just kept striving for some sort of answer, anything, whether it was in your studies, your reading. You continue to forge forward with the schooling. Amazingly enough, it is very mind blowing to me that you just kept this perseverance of wanting to continue going. And so many people might not make that choice. And that's why it's rare for certain people to be able to go into something else. So I love when you have gone into the self love aspect with the power of the mind, the mental fortitude. And, you know, just I would love to know a little bit more, because by utilizing some of those things, you have really come on top. And congratulations, by the way, with all of the things that you have now recently even
Yeah,
accomplished. That's absolutely
I
fabulous.
appreciate
So
that.
you're
I
welcome.
appreciate that.
What are some of the things that you started doing slowly? Like if I think about not having my voice, like did you start into a lot of writing? Were you able to do that?
Mhm. Well, I mean, I've been writing since I was 7 years old, and luckily that I continued to write. That was your question, correct, about writing?
Yes.
I've always written and I still write. And it's always been, it still is one of my ways of connecting with my higher self, with God, with spirituality, with higher consciousness. And it almost channels through me. But there was something else I was gonna say about quiet time, about go back to the question. You started the question with.
Well, when I picture going through, and I think of myself included, when we have those times, those down times, like you weren't able to speak, you weren't able
Right.
to move too much.
Mhm.
And so you have to go within, you're forced to. Our bodies are just
Right.
like,
Yeah.
guess what? You don't have anything else to do.
Yeah.
This is it. So you get to know
Right.
yourself. You get to figure
Absolutely.
out what it's like, to what your thoughts are. You really pay attention to that. You really pay attention to learning to love yourself, and
Mhm.
what does that look like? What does that
Yeah.
feel like? So,
So
yeah, you went into writing, and but just the in-depth aspect of that, of when we're silent.
you know I gotta say that that being silent actually really saved my life because it allowed me to find more of who I am inside. So as people heard in the beginning of the show, I'm a transgender, I'm a trans man. I lived the first 34 years of my life as a female. And those were the times where I was dying in the hospital. And I thought to myself when I was in the hospital, living a lie. And I say living a lie because I knew
Mm,
who I was inside, but I was living for my family. I was living for everyone else. I was living for Catholicism. I was going to go to hell if I transitioned. And I
right.
realized, you know what? I'm not going to go to hell. I know that I'm a good person. And if Caitlyn Jenner can transition in her 60s, why can't I do it in my 30s? And so at that moment, it was really life or death, being honest with you, because I thought, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die in the right body, not in this female body that doesn't feel like me. And so I didn't even tell my parents. I really didn't tell anybody. I took it upon myself. I already had been seeing a psychiatrist and a psychologist for 15 years, and they already knew how I thought, and they signed the papers, and I started hormonal replacement therapy at 34. So, I mean, that was really tough. It was really tough actually going through a second puberty in my 30s. And
Wow.
so, but
Yeah.
I mean, because I mean, going through puberty in your 30s means that had to get, acne. My voice started to crack, and I started to get a hairy chest, but I still had breasts. It was very uncomfortable, very going through this at an older age. But I knew I had to do it because I could see the end result. I could see who I was. I know who I am. I could see who I'm going to become in the future and what I might look like. Yeah, I hope
Yeah.
I get a beard. These were all the things that I was hoping for. And so I went for it. And then when I became silent, that was already about 4 years into the transition. And 4 years into the transition, I'm still a little pubescent. I already had the double mastectomy. I believe I had a hysterectomy at the time already. And so here I am sitting in silence in my new young maleness. And the grief that I was experiencing is, will I ever get my voice back? This whole time I wanted
Mm,
to be a man to sound like a man. Now it doesn't even matter if I'm going to sound like a man.
yeah.
And so I just there was just a lot of things that went through me. And then so when I went inward and started meditating a lot and praying a lot, I realized, you know what? I'm not transgender. I'm not once female to male. I'm not 5'2". I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor in clinical. I'm none of these. What I am is I'm love,
Mm.
and I'm a being of light, and I'm the divine nature. All of these are just labels. And when I started to see that these are just labels given to us for whatever reason, either to survive or to identify or to connect or to give people insecurities, none of it was serving me at that moment. The only thing that
Mm.
was serving me was knowing that I'm a being of light, that I'm a being of gratitude, that I'm all love. And when I started to see myself in the eyes of love, I started acting more with the eyes of love and welcoming everyone with the eyes of love and loving myself and loving everything that I've gone through. But I had to change that, April. I had to change that when I got even just 2 years ago, because I had this grateful mindset. I'm so grateful I went through this. I'm so grateful I went through that, because look at me now. But this whole thing that I realized, because this last year I went and had a couple surgeries, and I was like, what happened here? Because I thought I was in remission. I'll tell you what happened. What happened is that I was being grateful for all the surgeries I had. The universe will always give you more things to be grateful
Ah.
for if you're constantly grateful for certain things. So if I'm
Yeah.
saying I'm grateful for the surgeries I had, they're going to give me more surgeries to be grateful for. So I actually had to let that go and actually literally let it go. That's my past. It's no longer me. I went through it. I'm appreciative of the lessons, and this is my new life now. And once I was able to let that go, other things started opening up for me, and there's no more surgeries. There's no more surgeries that are gonna happen.
I love that. I There's so much that I just really is profound to me for the audience to be able to take away with that, Dr. Lino, because you talked about how you had to let go of the identities. And it's so
Yes,
often that we all create an identity for this, or we are a parent, we are our profession,
right,
we are
right.
this or that. And it is so difficult. It's one of the most difficult things that we can learn to let go. And it takes a long time, and it does definitely have to go within. And I love how you describe it, that we are light, that we are love, because that's exactly what God is, what source is. And if we know that we are made from that, that's what we are. And coming to that understanding and realization, is it takes a lot of work. It's very uncommon, and that's so awesome that you did it. And all of the things that have happened too. You're right. I love that you pointed out um being grateful. Yes, we should be grateful, but like you said, the universe just gives you and
What
reflects
you're grateful for.
exactly. Right. So, yeah, I'm grateful for the surgeries. Okay, here's some more. And so that is a
Exactly.
thank you so much for sharing that, because it's that perspective on how can we better learn to communicate that, it's on what we say, it's the way that we word things.
It really is, and that could be really challenging, where a lot of people, well, it's all in semantics or it's all in wording. It actually really is. And when you start
Yeah.
to change your wording, you start to change your belief system, and your thoughts are just basically your beliefs. Your beliefs are your thoughts are, if you're constantly thinking the same thing, it's going to become your belief. And so if you change the way that you think things, eventually you're going to start to change the whole paradigm. You're going to change your life. You're going to change your future. You're going to change your present. And by doing that is as easy as asking yourself questions and going inward. And so I invite people, and I invite you, and I invite guests or whoever's listening at your own time, when you have silence time to yourself, whether it's 5 minutes before you go to bed, ask yourself, who am I if I'm not a mother, if I'm not a father, or a husband, or a
Mm.
professor, or a mechanic, or a beggar? If you're not any of this, who are you? And if
Mm.
nothing comes in and you don't know, sit in that silence. You'll start to get a word or two: love, light,
Yeah.
perception, one with all. And well, what does that mean? Well, what does it mean for you? You just keep asking yourself these questions. You can't go wrong.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So we're going to go into our first commercial,
Sure.
Dr. Lino Martinez.
Thank
And I
you.
love the conversations we're having. And we'll talk more when we get back. Stay tuned.
Awesome.
Are you a practitioner or a coach listening to this? If so, I would love to ask you, do you use hypnotherapy in your practice working with clients? And if not, would you like to? The power of hypnotherapy is limitless. And so often we experience our clients struggling to reach their goals. It's because they're coming up against their own brick walls and getting stuck. But you can help them through the power of hypnosis break through all of that, working with their unconscious mind to put the suggestions in, to have them taking the action to achieve the results that they want. They are thrilled with your coaching techniques. They're getting the results they want. You feel amazing because you are helping your client get the results they want. It's a win-win. And another win is that it's an added revenue stream for you in your business. So if you like the feel of helping your clients get the results they want, if you like the sound of that, then definitely reach out, Melissa at yourguidedhealthjourney.com, or click the Linktree link below for my Unlimited Power of Hypnosis class to learn more. It's a weekend designation program that I teach, valid in 42 countries. You write an exam after taking the experiential course, and you can be admitted to the American Board of Hypnotherapy and start using hypnotherapy one-to-one with your clients and have them achieving the results they want.
All right. So, Dr. Lino Martinez, you have really described this major healing journey and learning how to go within, learning what the silence brings us and what a gift that it is. What are some of the things that you were researching? You have so many good words that you utilize and descriptions that you utilize. Were there certain books or certain people that you followed that were your guides?
Yeah, a lot of this transformation became when I started practicing Buddhism, and there's an incredible book called The Joyful Path of Good Fortune. It's a 700-page book. I think I'm probably barely in the 500s. And it goes through everything in life, from suffering to forgiveness to acceptance to compassion, which is huge. Compassion is so huge. And
Mm,
so, I mean, I really I love it. I mean, there's a lot of other books. Louise Hayes is incredible because she basically writes about how certain diseases get stuck in certain parts of your body. So, one of the parts, this is really incredible. So, if people believe in incarnation or reincarnation, yes, you could say these are the cards I was dealt with because I signed contracts to come into this life to go through this. But if you're not aware of that, what can you be aware of? And so Louise Hayes will tell you that there's special, or I'm sorry, there's certain temperaments that get stored in different parts of your body, which create disease.
Mm.
And one thing that I learned is that fear gets stored in the whole sacral area. And
yeah.
what was the first thing to go for me was my urinary bladder. And did I have fears back then? Oh yeah, I had all kinds of fears growing up. I mean, one of the biggest fears was I couldn't be myself, the gender that I knew that I was. And that's the sacral
Mm,
area. That's the whole gender, that's sexuality, that's creativity. That's where everything
yeah.
starts in your whole pelvic area. And so when I started to actually read these books and then recognize that different emotions cause certain diseases, I started going through my body and scanning my body. Okay, well, what about this? Oh, wow, anger is a very big cause of cancer. A bunch of other
Mm.
things that are metastatic cancer. That is. So it's like work on your
I'll
anger
try
issues.
not to
Work
be
on
so angry.
Yeah, I'm not saying that that's true for every single cancer, but what it says that if for metastatic cancer, like let's say that there's a cancer and then
Yeah.
it keeps spreading and they keep getting and it keeps spreading, almost always there's some unlocked or locked emotion with a certain disease, and it's important to
Yeah.
go in and ask yourself these questions: What am I angry about? What kind of resentment do I have? What am I holding on to? Where do I feel the resentment in my body? Oh, my chest, my heart rate is up. Well, your heart chakra, love. Is your heart broken? Has your heart broken? Have you forgiven anybody? Where are your resentments?
Mm,
And a lot of the times people need to forgive themselves. And that's really where it starts. And having even compassion for yourself. My goodness, I
yeah.
went through all this. Let's go back to the timeline. Hug yourself and say, I forgive you for going through what you went through. This is what you needed to go through to survive. But this isn't you. This isn't your identity. Let's clear that. Let's take a deep breath together. Hey, little Lino, I love you. Let's do this together. Let's release the stress. So
Mm,
a lot of it is really doing a lot of shadow work as well. Getting rid
yeah.
of disease and thriving from disease can go pretty deep, from self-exploration, loving yourself, and going through all the centers of your body and seeing where you have trapped emotions, because that's really where a lot of the underlying issues are: trapped emotions.
Yeah. How do you what's a good way to be able to help somebody understand how to start doing that, to do that shadow work?
It's a good question. So for me, for me, the way it started was just through a lot of distress, and I hope that people don't have to go down this way. I hope people don't have to wait till they're crying or having the dark night of the soul to figure this out. But it could
Right.
be as small as even having a headache and just sitting down and saying, "Okay, my head is throbbing. Let's see, what did I go through today? Okay, well, today I went through this. I went through this. Oh, okay. Well, what kind of feeling did that invoke? What kind of stress? And what does that stress tell me? That I'm not good enough, that I'm not gonna be able to succeed in life. But are these true? And actually
Mm,
start asking yourself these questions. What none of these things are true. None of these negative things that we tell ourselves are ever true. Because all negative emotion is fear. It's all the underlying emotion is fear. With anything negativity is fear. That's all it is. And there's only two emotions in life. It's either fear or love or fear.
mhm.
And if it's not love, it's going to be something negative or it's going to be fear. And so when you're
Yeah,
actually able to tap into that and ask yourself this question, then you're able to start releasing and recognizing, oh no, that's fear. That's why I have this headache. Wow, that's why my
yeah.
head is throbbing. Okay. And you kind of just break it down that way.
Yeah. And it's definitely all tied to emotion. I think that that was one of my understandings through my journey with health, is that all of it is tied to emotion. Anytime I had a major flare up, it was during times of enormous stress or enormous transition or anything that was just shook up my world. And like around 6 months later, give or take, I would become so ill. But that, you start noticing the things that keep coming up. So, one of the things I would love to ask you is, you've
Mhm.
done so much work. Have you,
Yeah,
or do you still come to some times where you feel like, gosh, I thought I already did that work, this self love work. Why am I still being aggravated in certain areas?
absolutely. Actually, just recently, kind of going through a separation with someone. I mean, we're in the friend zone right now, but I'm in the feelings of missing her. And
Mm,
while I was going through this, I mean, it's only been about a month and a half, but in with for the first month, it was, I mean, crying almost every day and starting
mhm.
to have these feelings. And guess what happened those 2 weeks? I got a sinus infection. It's not just a coincidence. Your body will start to shut down and you will start to get sick. And
Yeah.
so I had to go back inward and do some shadow work. What is this? Why am I feeling such rejection? Is it true that I'm unworthy and I'm loved if I get ghosted? No. Well, where do these
Right.
feelings come from? Oh, this reminds me of when I was a kid and my mom did this. Oh, okay. Well, let's go back to that timeline. So it's
Yeah.
like doing a lot of this work. And then I also I partaken, I don't know what's the right way to say, I partook in a 7-day meditation that included rocks. And I don't mean crystals, I mean rocks
Oh,
down the street. And in this 7-day
yeah.
meditation, we were to find rock, 3 different rocks. And what rocks do is they absorb an energy. They can absorb negative energy and transmute that back to earth and take it out of you. And so in the 7th day meditative journey, you were to name each rock and according to your insecurities or whatever you wanted to release. And one of the rocks was named insecure, was named undeserving, unloved, and what was the last word? Undeserving. And you are to talk to these rocks with these labels that you gave them based on your assumptions of yourself.
Mm,
And during this meditative journey, I realized how none of that was true, and I started to fall in love with my rocks. So you were to write and talk to these rocks and write them letters. And I remember on the third night, I looked at one of the rocks and I said, "Well, hello, undeserving, unloved, unworthy. No, you're none of that. That's not true. You are love, and I do love you, and you are worthy, and you're beautiful, and you're perfect the way you are. And God created you. Look at every crevice. You're perfect." And so then you kind of start to see the
mm,
transformation, and it
yeah.
was just one of the most beautiful journeys I've ever went through. So yes, I'm still on this journey that I'm going through right now to help improve myself again, so that when I go back into a relationship, I go back as a more emotionally healed man and just
Yeah.
ready to come from a more beautiful place of self-acceptance and not letting past traumas get in the way.
I really like that we bring this up because I think that some people might feel that there's like this end to self-development, to being enlightened, so to speak. And I don't
Yeah.
feel that there is. I feel like it's just this continuous work, continuous journey. And there's always going to be things that come up that kind of set us back, like within our relationships, right? And it does have us questioning and doing that shadow work that you speak of, where we're like, where is this stemming from? What memories do I have from the past that's bringing up this
Right.
emotion? And I really like to bring it up because of just that the people have this idea that, oh, once I get here, I'm going to be good. And and that's not the purpose of the life journey or the soul's
Yeah.
journey, I don't believe. And I was just going through that work last night. I was
Yeah.
speaking with my husband and I'm like, I don't understand why I feel this way. And so what's beautiful about a really great relationship is you can help each other walk through that process. And it's a beautiful
Yes.
thing.
That is a beautiful thing. It really is. And yeah, I mean, the soul is always the soul always wants to evolve. I mean, the soul, your pure soul is already in its pure, beautiful form, but our human self wants to evolve closer to the soul's ability to be. And we want to
Yeah.
be closer to our soul, our higher self. And in doing so, we're going to come across all these obstacles that are definitely going to pop up in front of our faces, that it's going to either push us down or push us up, or both, down and up.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Dr. Lino Martinez, I would really like to ask you, because you touched on it just a little bit, but I'm curious because you have gone through the transition from woman to man, and you talked about reincarnation just a tad. I'm curious, because you went through that, because you felt like you were someone different in this, a different form in this lifetime. Have you really gone into studying reincarnation? Has it piqued your curiosity because of your experiences?
The deepest I've gone is studying a lot of Dolores Cannon's research, her hypnosis, all of the literature that she's done. She's got a school of hypnotherapy, and she had over 3,000 patients that clients that she hypnotized, and all of them talking about their past lives and reincarnation. And so when I started to discover all this, and even doing past life regressions, and I've seen maybe just a couple lives where I was a female, but most of the time I see a lot of myself being a man in a lot of my lives. It actually made me realize that it's okay that I was born as a female the first 34 years, because a lot of the times I went through a lot of the grief, like, well, I missed out on being a young boy, I missed out on being a teenage boy, I missed out on being a boy in my 20s or even in my early 30s, and all of a sudden I'm a 43-year-old man. What am I supposed to, how, it takes a lifetime to be a 43-year-old man. But then I started to realize, you know what, I've been a woman and I've been a man many times in other lives. It's just this current energy, this current timeline, I'm not missing out.
Mm,
And if anything, I'm gaining, because the beautiful thing and the awesome thing that I was able to be a woman the first 34 years of my life is that I can be an awesome boyfriend and an awesome husband. I know what it's like to have a menstrual cycle. I know what it's like to be taken advantage by men. I know what it's like to not be able to say no to a man because you're scared and there's trauma. I know all kinds of things
mm,
being a female. And because of
mm.
that, I'm able to be a better man to my woman,
Yeah.
and be a little more understanding and a little more compassionate. And so I'm really glad that I incarnated and chose to be both genders in this life. It's really given me ability to love humans in unconditionally, and just see us all for who we are, and now what we are, what we possess.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely broadens the perspective. I mean, it opens up your mind on so many different levels that most people don't have the capacity to even go there. So, yeah, I mean, it definitely, I would think, very much enlightens you in so many respects.
It does. It really does.
Yeah. So we'll go into our second commercial. And when we get back, I can't wait to hear a little bit more about what you do now and the what's next. So stay tuned.
Thank you.
Kim Jacobs Consulting Kim.com. You know, people say opportunity knocks on every door. Right. No. Opportunity stands by silently waiting for you to recognize it. So I want you to recognize that this is a time for you. This is an incredible time to have your own talk show. It establishes a level of credibility.
Yes.
And by being exposed to people on a regular basis, it allows you to strategically begin to impact and attract your audience. She can take you in a place in yourself that you can't go by yourself. So go to KimJacobsConsulting.com. That's KimJacobsConsulting.com. Did I say KimJacobsConsulting.com? Yes, you did. Very good. Make sure you go there and sign up for the coaching, and we're looking forward to working with you. You have something special. You have greatness within you.
All right. So, welcome back. And you have so many cool stories, so many inspiring stories. My goodness. I think it's awesome that you're doing a podcast. That's how I came into contact with you. And so I would love to talk a little bit about that. What inspired you to create a show?
Actually, what inspired me to create a show was my higher self during meditation and when I was in silence. And when I was in one of the dark night of the soul and I was meditating and I asked, what am I to do with my life? The message said that I was gonna create a podcast. And I said, well, that is ridiculous. I can't talk. How am I gonna create a podcast? And I kept
Wow.
getting the words trust, believe, and then I heard I was gonna write a book, and I was like, okay, I could see that. I love writing. Sure, a book about all my life. Okay, I can. Sure, let's do that. When do I start? Now? Okay. So these messages I trusted and I believed. So I mean, I started right away. My book is 379 pages. It starts from birth to the last surgery I had, and into my transition and all the things that I've gone through and went through. And I also share 50 of my poems on there. And so I decided to podcast. My first year was with one vocal cord. So when I finally got on the right medications, the right immunosuppressants, one of my first left vocal cord started to come in. And when I started to talk again, I thought, oh, well, okay, higher self, higher consciousness was right. Here comes my voice. I guess I got to start this podcast. And so I started the very first podcast I did. I was very nervous. I didn't even know what my podcast was even going to be about. I was just following the path.
Yeah.
And the path said, start a podcast, get yourself a mic. It was the cheesiest mic. It was maybe like $20 on Amazon. I didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, well, what am I going to do? And then I remember just thinking like, what's my first episode going to be? What am I? And I heard, say your truth, you're transgender. And I was like, no, because I don't want the world to be like, oh, who is this trans guy? Because I was already done with the labels.
Yeah.
But I also figured there's something in that I needed to say. So the very, very first I mean, I'm already at maybe over 200 episodes, something like that. But the very first podcast was I'm transgender. And it was really difficult for me because I don't come out meeting people that way. I just feel like a man. I mean, it's just a transition is what happened. I just had to transition. But for some reason, that was the first episode coming out on what I went through and how I was raised a female and how horrible it was being forced into makeup and heels and bows in my hair and just the agony of being pushed to be somebody you're not.
Yeah.
And so, that's how I started. And then I slowly started reaching out to other trans men. I was like, well, I'll start here. Let me reach out to other trans men. So I was on Instagram, like, hey, I started a podcast. Do you mind coming out? Blah, blah, blah. And the next thing I know, I met this guy. He's this awesome dude and he's married. He's a trans man, really handsome trans man, married with 2 daughters. And I was like, wow, what this be? Would you and your wife, can I interview both of them? They're like, sure. Like, well, this is incredible. And so then it led to them talking about how they met, and they met back when he was still a she, and they were friends, and she knew he was really a he. I was just motivated after that. So then, but it was difficult, April. The first year with one vocal cord was very painful, and it hurt to even be like, yeah, to even say that. So I'd often look at the time, and be like, oh, it's only been 10 minutes. But I kept going and I kept going. And then after a year and a half, I finally got the second vocal cord back. So I've been with 2 full vocal cords now for about a little over 2.5 years. So that's how it started.
You
And here I
sound
am,
incredible.
Oh, thank you. I love that my voice is back. I love that my voice is back.
You sound so good. And how incredibly powerful. I mean, to be able to share your truth just right off the bat. And I can only imagine how that gave you so much, like it propelled you into the confidence that you needed to keep going. I mean, you just started right off the bat with that. And even for myself, I love utilizing my guests as my buffer for my
Sure.
own personal story and journey, to come out in like little increments, right? As we
Sure.
speak and discuss together. But it is something, it's very difficult to be able to just share yourself and share your journey, and your truth to the world. It is something, and
Yeah.
it's amazing to me that you had the issue with your throat chakra,
Right.
because I mean it's just so fitting for your story.
You
And
got it right
when
on. Yeah.
yeah, when we have issues with that, it's what truth are we not speaking?
Exactly. And so the more truthful I was, I mean, it's just I mean, look at me now, I'm being myself now, and all my chakras I feel are constantly working together and in harmony. But
Mm,
the podcast ended up evolving to becoming personal growth stories
yeah.
and journeys of people's lives. And it just happened that way. And it happened that way because it was my own personal growth in the beginning, and it still is. And even in the beginning, I remember I interviewed this really handsome model looking trans guy. And my question to him, because he was single, and at the time I was very insecure, I was like, well, how am I going to date a woman? How am I going to meet a woman close to my age when I don't have that much experience as a man? And I asked him, hey, are you
Mm,
ever insecure? And he's like, nope. I was like, what? And so the more that I interviewed other people, the more it gave me courage and
yeah,
confidence. So I was like, well, hang on a minute. Look at him. He's confident as can be. What am I insecure of, really? So a lot of
yeah,
these false beliefs that we tell each other that are not even true.
yeah.
It's
I
really
would
beautiful.
I would love to share the same experience when it comes to our guests. When we're interviewing people that we idolize in such a way, or we're like, "Oh my gosh, you're doing these incredible things," and they are. And then you get to see the very human level. Sorry, hearing a lot of reverb. I'm not sure why, but you get to see that they're just people like you and I.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so it's very grounding, and it definitely does help you be able to show up more confidently in the world. Dr. Lino Martinez, I would love to go back just a little bit, because you went into, oh, now I'm losing my train of thought.
Sure.
You talked about, oh goodness, I forgot. I really wanted to go into it, and I can't remember what I was gonna say.
That's okay.
But so I'll just let you talk a little bit more about the podcast journey until I remember what I wanted to say.
Sure. I love podcasting, and right now I release 2 episodes a week. And there was a time where I was doing three, and for me that was a little bit too much, because I write a lot of poetry as well, so I'm constantly writing and publishing. And I have a new Instagram. I also create e-cards, so if people are interested in having any type of poem. I do video poetry with voice. I can
Mm,
do it with voice or with music, and or I can create my own videos or download videos. And I create it for businesses. I also create e-cards for holidays, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, or whatever it is, or anything that you need. And you can go on poetic.alignment. That's my Instagram handle if you want to see any of the video poetry that I've created. And you can also go on my website at www.alittlelessfear.com, where I have more information on some of the poetry that I create as well. I love poetry. It just aligns me. It aligns me. I mean, I could write 10 poems a day. It just channels right through me. It's really beautiful having this ability.
that's amazing, and that is an incredible ability. I keep telling my daughter to keep writing, because she too has that gift of having the gift of writing, of poetry, and it's an incredible thing. So,
I'll
yeah,
sh-
I definitely
I'll
wanna
share
make
one with
sure.
you.
Yes, please, please do.
So also, there was something else I was going to add. What I was going to add that In regards to, it wasn't meditation. It wasn't. Was it cooking? Was it single? Poetic alignment. I'm sorry about that. I can't
No,
remember
I
what I
did
was
the
going to
same
ask.
thing. I'm surprised with myself. I'm like, how did I forget what I really wanted to cover?
We'll get there. So this one, okay. Here's a poem that I just posted on Instagram. I
Okay.
find myself questioning who I am, even though I know I am love. Surrounding thoughts tangle my true perception. Past memories get stuck and make it challenging to climb out of unlit spaces. But then I remember I am the light, I am the sunshine, and I am the rain. Yeah, that's one.
Oh, I love that. That's like it in a nutshell. I really like that. It's very descriptive and makes a lot of sense.
It does. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I lost my voice, another reason why it was very painful for me was because I used to sing mariachi professionally in my teens. And so
Wow.
when I couldn't sing anymore, when I couldn't speak anymore, I thought I loved to sing. I love singing to this day. And there is no other feeling that's better than being on stage and seeing people sing your songs, or people just enthralled by your voice, and you just all lit up on stage and you're
Yeah.
just channeling what's coming out of your throat, out of your vocal cords, out of this area, out of your heart, out of your gut, and just channeling pure loving energy. And so it was one of the biggest griefs that I went through when I was in silence. I was like, oh my God, I'll never sing again. And so when my voice started to come back, I went to speech therapy for 2 years, and in it, I was like, "Will I ever be able to sing again?" Well, it looks like let's try to do a G. When they would try to do a G, be like, "Oh no, you got a scar tissue right there," because I had some surgery in my vocal cord. So there was like
Yeah.
the letter G. I couldn't really do the G note, and so I just kept at it, and now I can sing again, and it's just really beautiful. But here's another thing. One more thing I wanted to share, and I know that it could be a little personal. And family members are not the biggest fans of me sharing information, but I'm sharing it because I feel it's relevant to my journey. So my brother went through his own illness, where he's a cancer survivor, and in he ended up getting cancer in his throat, and he ended
Mm.
up losing his voice box completely, which was very devastating for me because this is my brother, my only sibling. And I thought I will never hear my brother's voice again. And here I am getting my voice back, but my brother will never have a voice.
Oh,
And so then I realized, when I go back to my journey, that everything I've gone through in life was to better understand humanity, to better understand the body, to better understand what suffering is, and to be there for my brother now, because he's now struggling with what I struggled with 2 years, and this is going to be the rest of his life. And so
mm.
I don't know what his pain and my pain is never going to equate, because nobody's pain, there's no way to measure pain. Pain is just pain. But
Yeah.
what I do know is that I can be compassionate, and I can be a little more understanding than the person who hasn't lost their voice. And is
Yeah.
it a coincidence that it happens to be my brother? I don't think so. And so I am blessed that I did have that opportunity in that silence, and that I am able to see my brother with even more love and more compassion, because I too suffered in that silence. And so I wanted to share that. I know he's very private about his life, but this is my journey as well. And I got to say that my brother is one of the most strongest men that I've ever met, and that he inspires me so much every day. And I hope I can be as strong as he is. Really, really, I really hope
Oh,
so.
that's really awesome. It is fascinating to me how your life's journey has really come, where you're able to meet the needs of people who are so intertwined and close to you in life, like your brother. And you had already gone through the experience, and you had already gone through learning how to communicate without a voice, so you, I'm sure, are just this massive support system for him.
I try to be as much as I can, as much as I can,
Yeah.
really.
So I recall what I wanted to talk about, and it was
Okay.
the power of meditation, and how you said that
Hmm.
you found out and realized that you're going to write a book, you're going to start a podcast, and that was all through meditation. That was like this higher self guiding you and just saying, this is it, I'm going to give you the vision and you're going to go with it. And I think that that is something to be said, for when we go deep into meditations and how it can really guide us where we're supposed to be.
It can, and it's really beautiful the way that happens. I feel that a lot of people a lot of people get intimidated by meditation. They feel that it's just being quiet, and that's it. Well, I can't be quiet. My mind is always thinking. Well, yes, that is true, but we can learn to differentiate what are our thoughts and what are messages coming in and make it fun. Like, are these my thoughts or is this a message? And a good way to differentiate that is almost always it's going to be yourself or your ego if there are things coming in, thoughts that are based out of fear. But if it's a matter of fact thought or a one word answer, or if it's a loving thought, most likely that's a message or coming from your higher self. And almost always that's the right thing to do. And so
I,
I
yeah.
invite people to just try it out, sit in silence and ask a question like, how am I feeling? How am I really feeling right now?
Yeah, I love that
Stress.
you
Okay,
share
why?
really, yeah, how to recognize what is coming from your highest self and what's just the normal chit
Yeah.
chat that we have consistently going on in our minds. What kind of tips or tricks would you give to somebody who is just starting out in meditation?
Well, I know this sounds cliche, but for reals, breathing. You always start with breathing. And if you can start by taking 4 breaths, as simple as 4 breaths, breathing in for 4 seconds, holding it 4 seconds, and releasing six. And then the next one, releasing 7 seconds, releasing 8 seconds. The next thing you know, your fourth breath will be a long release. And then the
Mm,
next thing you could do after that is when you could do the same exercise when you start and breathe in white golden light. And imagine white golden light coming in through your crown chakra, going through your body, filling you up with gold. And when you exhale, imagine exhaling dark smoke and all negative energy is coming out of you. And you
mm,
inhale gold again, and then exhale dark smoke. And by your fourth exhale, all this dark smoke is going to come out, and then you're going to picture it being clear smoke at the very end. You're going to feel so relaxed at the end. You're not even going to realize that that was even meditation, but that's a good way to start. That's
that's
the
it.
easiest way to start.
That's an incredible way. I'm so glad that I asked you that because that's a really great description of somebody who would need guidance on how to start. So thank you so
And
much
it
for
it
sharing
can be
that.
difficult, April. Like I think I was
Yeah.
having some anxiety a couple days ago, and I wasn't able to breathe from my belly. I was like it was like locked in my chest, where I was like,
Mm,
oh, I feel tightness. So then I just really had to relax, and you start with the slow breath, slow. The next thing I know, I took a deeper breath, and the tightness was gone. So it really just takes sitting down and just try to relax and trusting your breath. One thing I wanted to say, I don't want to forget this. Also, part of meditation, people have heard of affirmations, self affirmations.
yeah.
One of the most beautiful things that I've found when I do my self affirmations in the morning is to not only self affirmations where I am or I do or I have or I believe or I understand or I know, but talk to your body, talk to your cells, and talk to your immune system, and tell your
Mm,
immune system how much you love your immune system, and even write this down. I did it myself. This is why this is awesome. I wrote down what would my body and what would my immune system tell me? What would it want me to know? And when I wrote it down, my body, my skin, my cells, they all told me, "I love you, Lino. I'm courageous, Lino. I got your back, Lino. Everything's gonna be all right." And I was reading all this, and I was like, "Wow," because that's also a form of meditation. You can even write. And so in reading this, I realized, wow, I love my body too. You love me, body? Well, I love you too. Wow, my immune system trusts me. I trust you too.
yeah.
It's really beautiful when you start to connect with your body. So meditation isn't always just what am I going to receive, but it's also connection.
Yeah. I love to envision that all of my cells are just like flourishing and they're so healthy and they're
Dancing
full of,
together, high fiving each other.
yeah, they're just, and so speaking to your body is really important and really going as deep down with all of those areas that you can and concentrating on them, especially the areas that are not doing so well. If you have a broken heart, really concentrating on that heart center.
Yes.
And, for you having urinary issues, concentrating
Right.
on that area and just filling it up with love and light. And it does profound things.
It really does. I love it.
So awesome. Thank you so much. I want to again make sure that the audience knows where to find you. www.alittlelessfear.com. Great title, by the way.
Thank you.
And you can also find that in the description. Dr. Lino, it has been awesome to have you on the Wellness Driven Life Show. I would love to know what's next for you. And is there anything else that you want to share with our audience today?
Oh, geez. So what's next for me? Well, right now I go back to teaching. I'm a professor in psychology, so I go back in the fall. But I've got some incredible goals to help the deaf community with music in the near future. Exploring more theater and being more creative
Mm.
with my passions and helping the deaf community and basically aligning the deaf community, being a bridge between the deaf community and the hearing world, because that's really not there right now. There's still a deviation. And so, but until then, I really need to go back to science school and become more fluent because I'm like a second grade level right now. So what's next for me in the near future is become completely fluent in American Sign Language, keep raising vibrations, keep writing poetry, keep the e-cards, keep bringing joy and love into people's hearts, into my heart, and into you. And thank you so much for this platform. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, too. You have such a
Awesome.
great
Thank you so much.
story. Beautiful human being. Thank you. All right. Well,
Thank
for
you.
everyone
My
else,
pleasure.
thank you so much for tuning in, and goodbye for now. We will see you later.